It's all good. Oh my goodness. Marquita, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to talk to you about this common trend, anxiety. A lot of people don't necessarily understand it, but they all feel as though they go through it. And so before we dive right in, please let the people know who you are as well as the services that you provide.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, first of all. So I'm Marquita Myrick. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a women's empowerment coach. On the counseling side, I work with mostly women, but I also work with men who are struggling with anxiety, depression, relationship deficits, life transitions, and I specialize in the first timer experience and really making sure that those people who have never attended therapy before really come and get what they need and have an amazing experience. And on the coaching side, I work to empower women specifically in the areas of mindset, healing from different emotional wounds that are holding them back and causing blocks in their lives, and really working on maintaining and building a healthy self esteem.
Love it. Y'all see how she just ran through that like a pro? Because she's an award-winning clinician, okay? Award-winning. When you
Award
win
winning.
awards, you just already know how to run through your resume. All right? Yes. Let her go. All right. So, yes, let's talk about anxiety. Like I had mentioned earlier, for a number of you guys who had hopped on earlier, anxiety can show up in a number of ways, whether it's like sweaty palms, increased heart rate, heavy breathing, feeling as though you're about to have a panic attack, so to speak. But, Marquita, can you please talk about a number of other symptoms that people tend to overlook or may not necessarily know offhand?
Yeah, so those are all important symptoms to highlight, the ones you just shared. And what some people come to me, I'm sorry you're going to hear the the alarm going by or the fire truck. But what some people come to me and share is that they've gone to their PCP, their primary care physician, and they were dealing with a rash or they were having headaches or they're struggling to deal with work in so many ways. And the hives is a big one, but they will rule out anything medical. They're like, I think it's anxiety. I think you might need to see a counselor. And so one of the biggest ones is people are popping up with physical manifestations of the anxiety. And of course, it can wear our bodies down. You know, we're doing all this mental work to fight the anxiety sometimes that it just starts to manifest physically in different ways. So that's definitely one. And some people report being very tearful. Of course, that's more characteristic of a panic attack, but they're like, I can't catch my breath. I feel like I just can't catch it. And some people feel like they're having a heart attack. And so they just really struggle and it leads them to the doctor's office only to have them end up in a therapist's office or virtually, of course, my virtual office.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And even as we're talking about adjustments, because that's one of the things that I specialize in, life transitions and adjustments, I find that people either become anxious as they approach change or as they're anticipating change, or they end up becoming anxious after the change actually occurs. And so, how have you helped your clients navigate through this idea of change, especially as we're redefining our norms? You know, 2020 has been really crazy for a number of us, whether it's like finding a new job or losing your job, trying to figure out how to pay the mortgage, or maybe even trying to figure out how do I tend to my mental health during this time. And so, how do you approach change in relation to anxiety?
Yeah, it's been so rough. I'm just adjusting my volume. It's been so rough for people during 2020, especially leading into 2021 with this anticipation of, okay, what's going to change? You know, there's a new administration and people have all sorts of worries about their career and their families as we progress. Now we're in quarter four, right? Are we officially in quarter four? Like,
I like you
it's
too, you
crazy.
know, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, quarter two. Thank you. Can you tell I have kids? I'm like quarter six. How many quarters do we have in a year? Um, so yeah, one of the things I do first is just kind of help people. Okay, let's first just acknowledge where you are. I'm going to commend you for acknowledging that something is off and that you're worried about what's to come or worried about something that's already happened. Um, and what that might look as it unfolds throughout the rest of the year. But after we do that, we really have to talk about identifying if it's like the fear of success or fear of failure.
Mm,
Is it a fear of what's expected of you? Is it a fear of you having to show up more? Is it a fear of what it looks like if you pull back and show up less? So it's so many different things to, when you talk about anxiety and that fear, it can branch off into so many areas. And what I find is that sometimes people think they're afraid of the worst case scenario when they're often afraid of the best case scenario too. And so that part gets interesting when they're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not afraid of the bad things that could happen. I am actually afraid to step into this new space because I could get a promotion, or we could move to another state because of these, because we lost our jobs, and that fear can push people to have those symptoms of anxiety pop up too.
Definitely. I love the fact that you're able to tap into that because you're right. It's not necessarily the idea of catastrophizing, but the fear of stepping into and what that looks like. It's kind of like even when we have clients, like you mentioned, the newcomers, those who have like that first time experience, during intake, it's just like all this anxiety because, all right, we're talking about treatment goals. Now we're laying it out on paper. We have a plan. How honest do I truly get in these sessions, especially since I really don't know what this actually looks like? And am I actually ready for the emotions or what may come on the other side of what comes through therapy? So I think that's an entire process within itself. It's just like, okay, acknowledging the need for change, walking into the change, experiencing the change, and then also maintaining change because it's always constant.
Always constant. And you bring up such a good point about that anxiety for first timers, because it's so real. And I feel like some clinicians, at least from what I hear from people who either say I had a therapeutic experience that just wasn't right for me, and then they're switching therapists, so they're coming to me, or those first timers, they just don't know what to expect. So even in a first session, they can just be so anxious. You could just see it. They're just moving around a lot and just can't keep their hands off their face. And it's like, let's just stop for a minute. Let's just breathe. Let's just acknowledge and honor where you are right now. Like this is big, to come to a therapist, to recognize, to say that I have some issues that I want to work on. And there's anxiety even in that. Some people wait years before they even reach out for therapy. So it's important to acknowledge and honor people for the courage it takes to come to therapy.
Definitely. And then also encouraging them to sit in those moments. Like you mentioned, like encouraging them to be like, hey, let's talk about what you're experiencing, like what sensations are you experiencing? Like what are the images that are running through your body or what running through your mind? What behaviors do you see in this moment? All of those different things. And it really helps increase mindfulness. And it also causes the client to create like these daily inventories over time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you're speaking into the treatment strategies now. You're speaking my language, the mindfulness, the tracking yourself daily. I'm like, let's do a thought log, let's do a behavior log. We're gonna get down to the bottom of this, but you're gonna have to do the work. I can't
Yes.
come with you to do the work outside of therapy.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. And y'all, I hope y'all are taking notes. As I mentioned, the reason why I do these conversations is because understandably, not everybody can afford therapy. And a lot of us need to know that there are amazing clinicians out there like Marquita. So please make sure that you guys are tapping in. And if you have any questions, please drop them in. This is your opportunity to ask whatever question. I just want to remind you, this is not a therapeutic alliance or any type of rapport, okay? Ask whatever question you need to ask. And so, Marquita, so how do you personally encourage people to navigate adjustments? We know that adjustments can show up many ways, whether it's like adjustment of emotion, recognizing that, yes, it presents as anger, but maybe I'm dealing with offense or disappointment or abandonment. Or on the flip side, even with adjustments of like I'm in a new setting and I'm trying to figure out how to get adjusted to all the rules and regulations and finding what space that I'm currently in. How do you help people pinpoint their need for adjustment and like I guess the time to like fully lean into adjusting?
Yeah, I would say their need for adjustment. Oh goodness, sometimes it's so clear, right? You're like, this is an adjustment period for you, and sometimes it's also grief in that adjustment period because
Mhm.
maybe they're leaving a job or they're leaving a relationship. You're leaving 2020. You're hoping to leave it behind because of everything that happened. So I really talk about just owning where you are and acknowledging it, and just setting your intentions. Like I'm big about setting your intentions every day, and like, what do you want to get out of this adjustment? So instead of fighting it so much, like let's stop fighting it. Let's stop talking about all the change that's going to occur as a result of it. But what version of you might emerge? And
Mm.
so I tend to ask some of those more out of the box questions to get their brain to shift from all of the worry of it. Like, who might emerge in this new job? Like, what different aspects of yourself might pop up that could be helpful for this experience? Or what have you conquered in the past that we can use to help you with this experience? Because so many people have survived so many things, but they forget it in those moments where they're having anxiety attacks. They're like, I can't do this. I can't. Yes, you can. So sometimes it's not even talking about moving forward, and it's let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about what other things you've accomplished. Let's talk about the anxiety you may have had then. Oh, so you mean to tell me you survived that? You mean to tell me you got through it? Okay, so now we already know you're going to get through this. We just need to create a plan. And so then we start talking about the strategies. So we kind of go forward, set that intention. What do you want to get out of this? Who's going to emerge? Are you afraid of that version of you to emerge? You think
Mhm.
people can handle that? And then we might go back to just see what have they already accomplished that can help us before we start adding in some new strategies, because maybe they already have some skills that they learned previously that they just aren't practicing.
Yes, 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 yes. What I like to tell my clients is just like pull out the receipts, create like a file cabinet, especially like since we're still in tax season. Just like how you collect all of your receipts to go to your tax preparer, make sure that you're creating a file cabinet of all of those things that you've been able to like work through, all of your strengths and all that stuff, creating those inventories. So when you're like down and out or when you feel hopeless or helpless, you can be able to take that stuff out and remind yourself of how truly great you are or how you've been able to work through all of those things. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I love it. I've never used the word receipts, but I'm gonna have to steal that.
It's all
I
good.
tend to call it a brag bank, but when you're working with some generations, you might want to come up with these new terms. So I'm gonna steal that one.
Go ahead. It's all good. Oh my goodness. And then speaking of intentions, you have a really dope video on your Instagram. Y'all, please do not click out of this just quite yet to go look at it. But Marquita, can you please run it down? How does somebody set intentions? How do they become intentional about being intentional?
Yeah. So again, I mentioned that I love setting intentions. You can become intentional about it if you're really paying attention to yourself. So one of the things that I've been working on for the past 12 months is really knowing myself better, right? And so knowing what makes you tick, knowing what makes you happy. And so when you wake up in the day, if you know yourself well, you can say, okay, what do I want to accomplish today? And I tell people, don't overwhelm yourself. I have tons of things on my to-do list, but if I get at least three of them done, then okay, that's perfect. So acknowledge where you're at. Take a look at your schedule and see exactly what space you have for different things, because that's something that people don't do. They'll just make a list. I'm setting my intentions. I'm writing down 10 things, but for me, I might have, the kids all day, which I do. I have a whole bunch of errands. Got to pay the quarterly taxes, which thanks for bringing that up because I got to pay that by midnight. Got to see some clients, right? And so your intentions need to line up with your available time, and not just your available time, but your available energy. What's your capacity to get those things done? So when you're talking about setting your intentions, you really need to be in a way, have some awareness about where you are in that particular day. And then just set a plan. Again, just don't overwhelm yourself. Maybe pick 2 to 3 things you really have to accomplish, and maybe reward yourself too. I am big on rewards. My weight gain shows it. Like, I love to reward myself with snacks. I'm like, yes, I got all 3 things done. I'm getting a donut. you know? So because that incentivizes you to get those 3 things done. And so you'll procrastinate less and you'll be more motivated to really, really put some effort towards it if you have a reward. And it doesn't have to be food, right? It could be you're going to watch 15 minutes or one of your shows on Netflix or something. But just find ways to reward yourself after you've accomplished the intentions that you set for yourself at the end of the day.
I love all of that because that's super realistic and it just helps to remind people that they're human beings, right? So the grace to be able to be honest with yourself about your schedule and your capacity instead of overextending yourself. So I love the way that you have explained intentionality because I think people feel as though intentionality looks like getting things accomplished. If I'm not doing anything, I'm not productive. It's just a lot of shame with that. And so being able to normalize and being more realistic with yourself when it comes to your tasks, I love it.
Yeah. I teach intentionality. There's a whole week on it for my coaching program because there's so many elements of intentionality. You know, it's not just our task list. I also tell people to be intentional about positivity. And some people look at me crazy when I say that, you know, and I'll have friends. I had a friend yesterday actually say, well, if you make it sound so easy, it's not that easy. And I said, well, no, some of these things are, a lot of what we teach in therapy is so simple, but you really have to set your intention that, okay, I want to get better. So I am, no matter how silly it seems, I'm going to get in the mirror and say those affirmations in the morning. I'm going to set my intentions and I'm going to actually practice these things because I want relief. I want healing. So we have to be more intentional about it. We have to go after it if it's what we really want.
And I think even with that, you know, if it was easy, then everybody would do it, right? It's just the simplest things. And we struggle with making a routine out of it. We struggle with making it a lifestyle. Like even when it comes to grounding techniques, like the 5 for 5. So 5 things you see, taste, touch, smell, and what is it? The other one, whatever the last one is. Y'all will catch it later.
I
But
know, I always
it's
forget.
like all of the 5 senses, and you're tapping into all 5 of them. And they're just kind of like, that sounds so simple. Well, it's just like, okay, try it in the midst of a panic attack. Okay, try it when you feel
Hmm.
like the whole world is like crushing you, you know. And once you continue,
Hmm.
it's like a muscle. Once you continue to put it into practice, it becomes second nature. But first, you gotta do it.
Yeah, you just made me think of something because you know, like when you're talking about grounding skills and using those 5 senses, the 5 for 5. Some people, like I remember in undergrad and even 6 years ago with my last full-time job, I was pregnant, you know, driving a long distance and having panic attacks on the way to work. And you know, it's those moments where we're like, okay, what was that silly thing my therapist told me to do? You know? And then you try to pull it out when you're in distress. And so what I tell people is I don't want you to just use it in distress. I want you to make this a habit. I
Yeah.
want you to be intentional about doing these things consistently. Whether it be, you don't have to be in a moment of anxiety or having an anxiety attack to practice grounding. If you're standing behind someone in line and they're dragging their feet about getting their groceries up and you're starting to get irritated because you have to pick up your child, I want you
Mhm.
to start grounding right there, you know? So just those daily moments. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm in distress right now. It's a catastrophe if I don't do this now. Make it a part of your daily goal to just practice intentionality, practice grounding and mindfulness. So yeah, you really made me think of that when you brought that up.
Yes, of course. I'm just like, because sometimes, like, even with crisis safety plans, I always tell my clients to create crisis safety plans for multiple things, not just when you're suicidal or homicidal or you're dealing with some type of psychosis. Create a crisis safety plan for the holidays when you know you're about to be across the dinner table from that cousin you really don't too much rock with, you know?
Yeah.
Create a crisis safety plan when you're about to be in clinical team meetings and you really don't feel like listening to that colleague right
Yep.
now. You know, create a crisis
Get that
safety
stress ball under the table and be working it. I've had those moments at jobs.
definitely.
Oh goodness.
And so please let the people know how you personally take care of yourself. How do you focus on your wellness as a clinician?
Yeah, I love that question because I really like to say I practice what I teach, okay? I do practice the mindfulness. I practice gratitude consistently whenever I find myself in some form of distress. And distress for me could mean my toddler's having a tantrum, right? That's distress for me. It's like, oh, no, you didn't. I'm trying to get dinner ready, right? So
How dare
I'll stop and be, how dare you? The red beans and rice are cooking, all right? So I stop and just practice gratitude. Like, and my thing is, what are 3 things? I envision a stop sign. Like, I literally do this. Envision a stop sign, and I say, you stop what you're doing right now. What are 3 things you're grateful for? And instantly, that just starts to shift and change. And I don't just say, the roof over my head, my kids, and a car. You know, I don't just do that. I say, oh, these kids that I prayed for, and these kids, and I start envisioning them playing in the park, and just all these things bring up those good feelings. And the next thing you know, you're in that moment in the park with them, and you're like, what was I mad about again? You know, so I do that. I love massages. We have a massage chair in our home, so I have built-in self-care in the home. I love baths with aromatherapy. We diffuse essential oils. I'm trying to think what else I do. Oh, I said mindfulness already. I do grounding and mindfulness skills I love meditation. I don't practice it as consistently as some people might teach, like, oh, you need to be making that a habit every day. I don't do it every day, but I make a habit of, if I'm feeling some distress, or even if I'm not, I'm like, it's a quiet moment. I could just go meditate and just
Mhm.
recenter myself, because there's a lot going on, right? Because we want to be doing it when we're in distress and when we're not. I do that, and I do 3-minute meditations. I don't have time to be sitting for 15 minutes, So yeah, and deep breathing. That's a big one for me. I love the 4-7-8 breathing method. I do that. And just to share with the audience, it's where you breathe in for 4 seconds, and then you hold it for 7 seconds, and then you release it for 8 seconds. So if I'm feeling, again, a tantrum, or if I'm rushing to get my daughter and I'm just anxious about getting there on time in that car line, I may just do that on my way driving. Like, so I'm really big on paying attention to my body and my breath, and what I'm doing, and how, like, what emotions are popping up. I ask myself that throughout the day. What emotion am I having right now? And I do struggle with anxiety. So I do have to practice what I teach. So
Yeah.
when people try to give me that excuse that, no, that's not going to work, and this and that, and I don't want, okay, I'm telling you it works. So either you want to get better, or you don't. Which one are you gonna choose? Just try one. Try one. If it doesn't work, we'll tweak it when you come back. So yeah, firm believer in taking those skills and not overwhelming yourself and feeling like you have to do it all day, but just pick something
Yeah.
if you're feeling the need to pick it. So
That's
that's what I do.
it. Because, April is Counseling Awareness Month. So I'm trying to ask every clinician this month, like, how are you taking care of yourself? Like, how are you tending to
Mhm.
your own personal needs? It's so funny because a group that I had this week, I asked the group, I was just like, how does love show up for you? What does love look like? What does it feel like, taste like, smell like, all of those things, so that you can start building these healthy associations with more positive emotions and whatnot. At first, they were looking at like, Miss Sierra, what? What, Miss Sierra? And I'm just like, for example, love can look like that lemonade that your grandma makes on a hot summer day. And it's just like, they looking
Mhm.
at me like I'm Erica Badu or something, like I'm just dropping gems. I'm like, no, like, start creating positive associations with things that like embody certain
Yeah.
emotions, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, that's such a good point, because when people think about love, they think about what other people are giving to them. And so it's like, oh, I need a person to love me. Oh, my parents haven't told me they're proud of me. I'm not feeling loved. Or if your spouse isn't wanting to watch a movie with you or whatever, you're not feeling love. But
Mhm.
it's some of those simple things, like those memories, and doing my hair. That's self-care, and it's love for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know I love myself today, because I don't feel like dealing with this 4C hair. So if I did, that's love.
Seriously, and I think those are prime examples. Like if we can like call those memories back, it'll definitely help us with managing anxiety, creating those safe spaces for ourselves and our minds. It really goes a long way. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
sharing. Marquita, please let the people know where they can find you, as well as your website, all that jazz.
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Marquita Myrick LPC. My website is marquitamyrick.com. And I would love to have you reach out to inquire about my 6-week group coaching program, Becoming Her, Healed, Elevated, and Restored. It's been amazing having this time with you. Thank you so much.
No problem. And what states are you licensed in?
Good question. Colorado, Florida, and Georgia.
All right, for my Florida people. Okay, y'all better hit her
Yeah.
up. All right. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, so I'm just like, yes,
Oh, you are? Yeah.
yes. I live in Atlanta
Yeah,
now,
it's a good.
but yes, born and raised in
I
Florida.
lived in Atlanta 2 years ago. We just switched.
Yes, awesome sauce.
It's a good question to ask, though, about which states you're licensed in, because most people don't consider that, and they'll send you referrals, and I'm like, I'm not licensed in Pennsylvania. I'm not licensed in New York. Like,
I would take you, but I'm not licensed.
I know, like, I don't practice unethically, okay, and
Yeah.
I don't have the license there. I can't work with you.
Oh my God. So, y'all, please thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Therapy Thursdays. As always, make sure that you're tapping in. This will be not only here on Instagram, but it'll also be on the podcast and the YouTube channel as well. So, if at any point you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, please make sure that you're hitting up Marquita at all of the details that she responded to. And then also make sure that you're hitting me up at legacysbks.com and Legacy SBKS on everything. Thank you so much for your time.